All right, everyone, let's go Brandon Green. How are we today? Today on the episode, we got Lester Robinson, if that is his real
It is my
name.
real name.
It's your real name. It's not a pen name. He's actually an author, and he's written a book. And the book, what's it called? How to Protect Your Money and
For Medicaid and a nursing home. Basically, it's an educational book and how to.
Yep.
It's not a legal book. It's not an investment book and accounting insurance. It's basically people can read the book, understanding some educational questions to ask their trusted team. So they ask the correct questions so they're able to keep more of their money from a nursing home event.
Okay, so obviously being from Australia, I don't know too much about what goes on in America, but yeah, it's a little bit, I think it's a bit different, eh? But I have spent some time in America, so I'll probably, I'm always a little bit interested in what goes on there. Now, with this book, how old is someone that should be reading it?
Probably about 50.
You're not going to get a 21-year-old to read
you're not.
something about a
No,
nurse.
you're not going to get it. Now, you're going to probably get someone about 50 or 60 that's getting ready to retire, or you get a family member that's needing care and they have no idea what to do and they want to educate themselves, and this book is good for that too.
Okay, rightio. So someone getting prepared, getting ready, ultimately knowing that the nursing home's coming. Because nursing homes are expensive, and some people are in there a long time, some people aren't in there all that great deal of a time at all. And what's this Medicaid? How would you describe Medicaid? There'd be people in America that would know of Medicaid, but they wouldn't really understand it. So, what can you say there?
Medicaid, at the end of the day, is the great equalizer. So you've worked for 50 years of your life. You've done no savings, no planning for the nursing home. You go into the nursing home, and they can basically take all of your money but $2,000 and $50 a month.
Okay. So even if you've got hundreds of thousands of dollars in there?
Yep, Medicaid can come in and take everything you've worked for.
In Australia, we call that like superannuation, but they can't do that because obviously... What? So you're getting the same treatment as the guy in the room next door, but you've saved... Is it a savings, this Medicaid that you get?
Basically,
over a year?
Let's say you got two rooms. One guy's worked their whole life, the other guy hasn't. The one guy has to spend all of his money down except $2,000, and then the government will start paying for his care. The other guy walks in totally busted, and the government starts paying for his care at day zero.
Jesus.
Yeah.
So what's the point of having any?
Money? Well, the point...
Yeah, but if you don't need Medicaid... Is Medicaid like a forced savings? Like over here we've got...
No, it's not a forced savings.
Superannuation.
It's the healthcare program in the United States. So there's no...
So every single person has Medicaid?
At the end of the day, it's the fail-safe program for everybody, correct?
Okay. And do you think Biden is doing enough to sort this out?
With Medicaid, these rules have been around since before Biden was in charge. The rules were written in 1965. They haven't really been changed since then. So
no one along the line since Clinton, Obama, Trump, nothing. It was never discussion on this. So you found a problem that your book addresses. But for your book to be picked up and read and wanted to be read by someone, they need to know that there's a problem coming up. How is that?
Basically,
they need to know that you can solve a problem.
Very simple. Most people, when they hear about my book, say it'll never happen because they haven't gone through a long-term care event. People that have gone through a long-term care event, very simple, understand my book, and they would say, wow, there's a solution to this problem. So if you've never had it, my book would mean absolutely nothing to you, but if you've been through it or in the middle of it, my book would help you.
Yeah, well, 100%. Especially if what you've just... I don't even know how that can work, like how you can have two people in the room next to each other. One has tens of thousands of dollars saved, and that just gets ransacked by the joint, and the other dude just sits there chilling the same, and he hasn't lost anything because he had nothing to lose in the beginning. Where you're saying that money could be funneled down to an inheritance afterwards rather than going to the
Government.
healthcare facility.
Yeah, basically, it's really a very simple process. Understanding your surroundings and planning. Most people don't really start planning until they're about 9th month in the nursing home, and there's really no options.
Okay, so you definitely need to read this book or take the advice, implement it a few years before this happens.
Correct. And this is true in Australia and true in the U.S. What's the number one way that you can keep your independence from going into a nursing home? Besides eliminating the health, taking your health out of the situation, a non-health way that can keep you out of the nursing home, which would be true in Australia and the United States.
Have family?
Nope.
To look after you?
Well, that's good. A fall prevention class.
A what?
A fall prevention class. They offer.
What's that?
So, like how you trip and fall and then you get hurt and you go to the hospital.
Okay.
They have classes over here in the U.S. and they have them in Australia. They're a wellness benefit. And if you take one of those classes, it's going to help you reduce your ability of falling. So if you have somebody 75 years old that falls, goes to the hospital and can't come out of the hospital, they're going to a nursing home. But if they would have taken the class and removed the item that caused them to fall in their house, they may never need care.
Okay. So it's about equipping your house with fall prevention. Yeah.
That's part of the book, correct.
Okay. So you hope that they end their life in somewhere that's not the nursing home.
My objective is that people buy the book, take care of themselves, are very lucky, never need it, and one night go to bed and pass away or recover very nicely.
Yeah. Okay, right. And then that way more money is kept within the family and going to where they want it to go rather than back to the government.
Correct.
Okay. Now, I must ask you, Mr. Robinson, what made you want to write this book? There must have been something that you've seen firsthand, I'd say, and then say, this needs to be told. Like, I can help people so easily.
It started real simple. I've been teaching classes for over 15 years, and I noticed the same mistakes happening over and over and over again. And long story short, as I started tracking this stuff, and then I came up with 5 or 6 important points that I could introduce to my class. And then I found out that people were taking these points in the class and they were becoming more successful. So then I started writing a book. And then actually in 2019, I kind of got sick of it and put it in the box and just said, I'm done with this. And then in October, my wife had surgery. And the day after surgery, my wife could only move her fingers and her toes. And we went to a rehab facility. And then that night I was sitting out on the back porch just thinking, going, I'm done. I'm going to be working. We're going to lose all of our assets. Everything is just. And then I was sitting there going, I've been working on this book. So I pulled out the book in the hardcore manuscript and I went through it. And about 20 minutes later, I realized what I wrote actually worked because it's applying to me and my wife. So it's like the user and the developer. And I'm like, next day I went to my wife and I said, hey, we're good. We're not going to lose our assets. We're not going to lose our income. I hope you walk, but if worst case scenarios, we're not going to be at a bad place. So actually what I wrote in the book, I would say I was the first user of my process and it worked. So I can actually say I field tested it under real circumstances.
Right. And you had nothing to do with the nursing home. So it not only covers the nursing home.
Assisted living. So if my wife if she went to rehab, and because of her surgery on her neck, was still only able to move her toes and her fingers, and she didn't get any better, my wife would end up in a nursing home eventually, and she would have need round-the-clock care for the rest of her life.
All right.
But she was able to learn to walk again, and that was a win.
Yeah. And how long has your book been out now?
My book's been out since October.
Okay, yeah, great. And you would have had a few people say, oh, yeah, this thing should have been out for decades if what you've said has been the rule since then and only now you've noticed it. And they're taking a fair chunk of your money.
It's all about planning. It's basically if you understand your surroundings, you're good to go. It's like, let's say your sensor goes off on your car, okay, and you realize that it's a $4 sensor that you have to change. So you're able to change the sensor. You go to the mechanic and say, hey, by the way, I need the $4 sensor change. It's going to be about, $50, $60 for your mechanic bill versus driving into the
rather than $4,000 later on.
Because you understand the problem and you understand the cause. You don't know the first thing about fixing a car, but you know what the cost is. So it puts you in the driver's seat, so you're not getting taken advantage of.
Okay. And have you written any other books before or anything?
I was a co-author on a long-term care planning book, and many years ago, I was a co-author. I was asked to submit an article on how to improve your life, 101 ways how to improve your life, and it's how to turn 2 negatives into a positive.
Okay. Yeah, right. So you've been doing like improvement stuff for a while.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, no, this is good. Also, with your book, like, so it can be not just implemented in the nursing home, but around hospitals as well.
Anybody who wants to set up a plan, let's say you don't want to buy insurance, you don't want trust, you don't want to do any of that. You don't want to say, look, I just want to understand what can happen to me. You buy the book, you do the worksheets, then you can sit there and say, I understand that I can lose all of my money. You understand it. Or if I see my advisor, how are we going to protect my money? It's just you're causing you to ask the correct questions, or you can collect the data and then make your correct decisions. It's empowering yourself to make the correct decisions.
Yeah. And I also see that there'd be a good place for like people that deal with these older people to recommend your book, like maybe even from tax accountants to doctors, or like in like where you're half having the conversation of where you're heading at that time of your life,
Oh, yes, I have been handing out books. I do teach educational classes between the libraries and the school systems, but once we can get back into in-person, it's a lot better to present the book and present the problem versus doing a webinar where the people don't talk and you talk for 40 minutes and then say thank you and say bye.
Yeah. And is this problem a big, well-known problem over there, or is it something that's...
People don't want to think about the problem. They think if they don't talk about it, it won't happen to them.
Okay, you're one of them. Yeah, right. So, but is it like well-known kind of that you can lose all your money at these retirement facilities?
Yeah, they sit there and they listen to people saying, don't worry about it, you're good, you're good, you're good. And what happens is you have a husband and wife, and the husband ends up going in and needs care and exhausts all the resources. Husband passes away, the wife's left with $2,000 and a very small retirement, versus if they would have planned, the wife would have been able to keep majority of the money and having like an $8,000 a month retirement. Now she has a $2,000 a month retirement because of the assets were taken because of the long-term care event. The biggest problem.
This sounds crazy.
The biggest problem of a long-term care event, when the first spouse goes in, the second spouse usually gets impoverished.
Yeah, and that's when they need it. That's when they start going downhill the soonest.
Correct.
They start going downhill soon after they've lost their other that they've had for decades, and they've got no one then to help them. Not as many, and not as many immediate family members, and now they got way less money than they ever thought they would have had. So this can turn even like someone who's saved, multi-millions, like straight away.
Technically, if you could have
drained.
You have a bad enough long-term care event or do enough bad plan. I could be on your show for 5 hours talking about it, but I make it real short. I've seen people that have done completely bad planning that have wiped out hundreds of thousands of dollars in 3 to 4 years.
Wow.
And half of that money was because of bad planning mistakes. That wasn't the cost of care. That was just bad planning on their paying for care.
On their behalf, right. So not only do your will, you also read Lester Robinson's book, follow the procedures there. You've written it all pretty simple for them to follow, so they're not going to get any...
It's 156 pages. I'll make a long story. The original book was 350 pages and took you 8 hours to do the worksheets, and I had like 27 worksheets, which I have skimmed back to 5 worksheets.
Yeah.
But so it's, when you write a book, you keep cutting it and cutting it. So basically, anybody can pick the book up and probably read the book in about 40 minutes and do the worksheets. And if you don't understand that, I offer twice a month a free seminar that people who buy the books, who I go through it a little bit more. And usually I do the seminar for 15, 20 minutes. And then they ask a few questions. And if they want a one-on-one time, I will take a couple questions from people who have purchased my book to help them finish their worksheets.
Yeah. Oh, wow. So you're giving that after purchase service as well.
Yeah. And that's all. It's all included in the book. It's free. I mean, I'm not going to spend 18 hours on the phone with someone. But if you call me up and say, I have 1 or 2 questions, usually 99% of the questions are just educational, answering the questions and saying, this is what you need to do. Or when you talk to your advisor, ask this question. And that's it.
Yeah. Okay, great. So how much does your book cost, and where do people buy it?
It's $27.95 for the paperback color edition on Amazon, or $9.95 for the Kindle edition. It's not black and white for the paperback. It's got there's artwork in it, so you have a better understanding of the book, because the presentations of the photos or the images stick out, so you get a better understanding of it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that sounds like a bargain compared to what the opposite, what potentially could happen if you don't follow it.
Correct.
And we've all got to make plans, I guess, for the future, as much as it is not fun to talk about or we don't want to talk about. But someone like you who's been around this and seen, you've written a book about it, and it can save them tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars. Well, it's a bit of a no-brainer.
It is.
That's why you wrote the book.
You got it.
There was a problem to solve, and here it is. If anyone's sleeping on it, well, they can't blame Mr. Lester, He put it out there. Yeah. All right, well, Lester, thanks for coming on today. And do you have any other questions or anything for me?
No, basically, if you want to buy the book, you can go to my website at www.lesltc.com and just click on the buy the book, or go to Amazon.
Okay, Amazon or your website. Yep. All right, no worries. And Lester, well, you have a great night over there in America.
You too. Have a great time in Australia.
All right, see you, man.
And thank you for interviewing me.
No worries, buddy.
All right.